Israel is a world leader in desert agriculture. Israel is a world leader in renewable energy. The JNF is very active helping Israel building water reservoirs. If I'm not mistaken, they built 220 of them to date. Very active helping Israel establishing its desalination plants, rehabilitating rivers, and so on and so forth. The conversation about the environment is a critical conversation to the younger generation in America. There's no coincidence why JNF is one of the fastest growing Jewish organizations in the country, raising money at a tremendous pace because their message of the environment is relevant to people, and I see many young people here in the room, and that's a great thing. The second area is, as I said before, the no-brainer, the startup conversation, the startup nation conversation, high-tech, medicine, electronics, and so on. I don't have to tell you, Israel is the world leader, producer of conceptual products. We have 4,000 startup companies. Israel's contingency to NASDAQ is the second largest after the United States. We have, in fact, more companies on NASDAQ than China, Germany, and Japan put together. That's a mind-boggling achievement. The third area is Israel's tremendous conversation around culture and the arts. People don't think of Israel as a cultural powerhouse. But if you go and you ask executives at HBO and ABC and Showtime, they'll tell you that Israel is a powerhouse. In fact, Israel is the third largest producer of content to American television, believe it or not. But we also have modern dance and literature and music and what have you, the whole conversation, theater, you name it. You all know this. The Israeli film industry is doing great. Television industry is doing great, but we also have great other assets. The fourth conversation is the conversation that deals with the people and the legacy and the heritage and the diversity. We call this the people conversation. The story of Israeli human diversity. I went to give a talk at Cal State Fullerton with an Ethiopian security guard from Ethiopian Israeli from the consulate. The students, most of them Latinos, were amazed. They looked at me and they didn't believe that this guy was an Israeli. Very, he looks like a movie star. You should look at him. He's a very handsome guy, tall. I said, Israel is the only country in the world that actually goes into Africa and brings people into Israel. The only country that does that. We have over 120 ethnic groups represented in Israel. How many Americans know that? We have over 80 languages spoken in Israel regularly. How many people know that? Israel has something to offer to every person on the face of this earth. Not a lot of people know and celebrate that tremendous diversity. The fifth conversation is probably the most powerful conversation. Lifestyle and leisure. Lifestyle and leisure is the #1 draw online. Check with your kids. Most people that go online report the main reason for them to spend time on the internet is because they're looking for information about the way they live their lives. So it's what we're wearing, what we're eating, what we're drinking. It's wine and food and fashion and product design, interior design, architecture, and what have you. Israel has a lot to offer in that area. And the last conversation, sadly, is Israel's best-kept secret, Tikkun Olam. In 1960, Golda Meir, who was raised here in the United States, established a program in Israel called Mashav. It's a program that is all about Israel's international aid. When we had nothing, we had no assets, no natural resources, the tiny state of Israel established an international aid program. And that aid program is active until this very day. Right now, as I'm standing in front of you here, hundreds of Israeli doctors are healing disease in villages in Africa. Hundreds of Israeli experts are teaching drip irrigation in remote villages in China and Latin America. People don't know that. And I'm ashamed to say that most Israelis are unaware of that program. The combination of all those 6 lenses can produce something that goes beyond the current conversation. The current conversation is a necessary conversation to have. It's about the conflict. It's about crisis management. It's about the need to convey Israel's in time of crisis. Now, how does this combat delegitimization? The secret is very, very simple. I call it reverse price tag policy. You see, in every place where there is a call for divestment, when people are calling to boycott Israel, the only and absolutely only effective answer would be and should be a renewed, reinvigorated investment in Israel. Divestment equals investment. The investment in Israel doesn't have to be financial. It can be emotional. It can be expressed in tourism, in visits. When I tell people don't cancel when there's a big crisis in Israel like we had 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I tell people don't cancel your trip, because when people when synagogue groups cancel their trip to Israel, they don't just cancel for 2 weeks. They usually cancel it for the whole year, and the damage to Israel's economy is tremendous. So I tell people, don't do that. Don't cancel your synagogue trip or your organizational trip to Israel. Just postpone it in a couple of weeks. Because we have to understand this is the investment in Israel that we need. And the investment in Israel translates back into the community. In fact, when you're investing in Israel, when you're investing in JNF, you're investing in yourselves as well. Last story, and I'll conclude with that. In 1972, Israel's Prime Minister Golda Meir was asked to host the German chancellor at the time, whose name was Willy Brandt, in Israel. And someone told Golda, if you'd like to impress Willy Brandt, you should take him on a tour of German architecture in Tel Aviv. There are about 3,000 Bauhaus buildings in Tel Aviv. So she did. And they concluded the tour, those of you who know Tel Aviv, in the Habima Square. And she showed him Israel's Performing Arts Center, Hechal HaTarbut. And she told him, this is the Man Auditorium, our Performing Arts Center. Willy Brandt said, Man Auditorium? I can't believe that you, the Israelis, made the decision to name your own Performing Arts Center after the famous German author Thomas Mann? And she said, no. We named it after Freddie Man from Philadelphia. He said, Freddie Man from Philadelphia, never heard of him. What did he write? She said, he wrote a check. Now, the point of the story is very simple. It's a true story, by the way. There is a tough competition out there, vicious competition. The competition is between countries and between cities. With all due respect to Cairo and Rabat Ammon, Jerusalem's competition is not Cairo and it's not Rabat Ammon. We'd like Jerusalem's competition to be in Europe. We'd like Jerusalem to compete with Paris. And Tel Aviv's competition is not with Ramallah, with all due respect to Ramallah. And we have a lot of respect to Ramallah. Tel Aviv's competition should be Barcelona. Israel's competition is not in the region. Israel's competition is in Europe, is in North America, is in Asia. At the end of the day, we have to understand that in today's competitive world, it is no less important for Israel to be attractive than to be right. It's important to be right, don't get me wrong, but it is no less important to highlight your attractive facets. That is the effective answer to the narrative of delegitimization. To talk about ourselves, about what we're offering, not about the other side. We must never let the other side define who we are. There's a guy who's teaching us a very important lesson. We're in Hollywood, so it's appropriate to mention his name. His name is Sacha Baron Cohen. And we take Sacha Baron Cohen very seriously. Sacha Baron Cohen woke up one morning, probably 11 years ago, and said to himself, I'm going to take a real nation with real history and real territory and real people and real political leadership and real political system and natural resource and all that, and I'm going to redefine them in such a way that they themselves will not recognize their country. And he did. He redefined the identity of Kazakhstan single-handedly. Unbelievable. Think about it. Do you know any other Kazakhstan? Think about it. He's not even Kazakhstan, and he's the world's most famous Kazakhstan. Now, we asked ourselves, why did it happen? And the simple fact is that Sacha Baron Cohen was able to redefine another country's identity simply because they did not do enough proactively to define who they are to the world. Israel is pretty much in the same position. We allowed the other side to negatively brand us, to hijack our narrative, to define Zionism as something synonymous with occupation, but you should know that. Zionism was always about the promotion of goodness. It was always an optimistic movement, this most successful national movement in the 20th century. That was about self-growth and self-sufficiency and self-building. And it's time that we all reclaim the basic tenets of Zionism and celebrate that. And with the help of the JNF, we can do that. God bless you. Thank you so much.